Good afternoon, and welcome again to Stay at Home and Brew It. I'm Jeff Perot.
And I'm Brock Mornga.
And today, we've changed things up a little bit. We were going to be covering hops again, but we're going to move that to another day, considering our star was unavailable right now.
We love changing things up here at TBI as well. So
Exactly.
It adds a little spice, a little terroir to life.
Little, how do you say?
That's a little something. How do you say?
Je ne sais quoi.
Je ne sais quoi.
So today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be covering mash efficiency and kind of some things about mashing in general. A lot of times we get people coming in and asking us questions about their efficiency, and they'll talk about mash efficiency, and we've heard anything from the person who says, well, I'm only getting 40 to 50% efficiency to I had somebody one time who said, well, I'm getting about 98% efficiency on my mash.
98%. That's fantastic.
That would be incredible.
You should open a brewery now.
Indeed. So, what we're going to talk about is a little bit about what is mash efficiency, as well as some of the things which can negatively affect your mash efficiency. So, what is mash efficiency, and does that mean, is that the same as brew house efficiency?
Well, I think so. Let's talk about the mash efficiency first. And a lot of people just ask me, Jeff, what is that? I don't know that a lot of newer brewers really even understand or have an idea about what we're talking about whenever we're throwing around this brewing ease like that.
Yeah.
So let's start there. Now,
Okay.
I think a really good tool for you to be able to calculate this is, and we've said this before, is the beer smith.
Yeah, that's a fantastic tool.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
And it's one that if you haven't heard us talk about it before, you can download it online. I think there's like a free trial that you can use for a while and try it out, see if you really like it. But it's not that expensive, and I've been using it for quite a number of years now, and I know you, as well as most all the guys in the shop, use it too.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And I do have some grain filer users, and they have an app on there, and that'll help you with your efficiency. So basically, just in a nutshell, mash efficiency is just the extract value that we're going to get from our grain, right? Mm-hmm. Our overall number, our specific gravity, our OG, our original gravity, is going to help us to make this number, right?
Correct.
And so I've done my mash now. I've got my wort. Is that okay if we could just say that? And now I've taken a reading, right, with my hydrometer, my refractometer, and now what? How do I know what efficiency I got?
Well, now at this point, you'll have a number. So if you're using your hydrometer, or if you have a refractometer, you'll have a number of the amount of sugar that solution currently has. At that point, you can look at your recipe and see, was that the amount I should have had, or is it higher or lower? Mm-hmm. If it's higher, then your efficiency is higher than what you originally thought it was, or what perhaps even the recipe. Like, I think most of our recipes are set for 70% efficiency. Is that about
something
right?
Like that.
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly, but that sounds close.
Okay, so you could look at the recipe and see if you got a little bit higher, a little bit lower. That'd give you kind of an idea of whether your efficiency is a little bit better or a little bit less than what the recipe has it for, as it was originally set.
Yeah, so the whole thing works like this, right? If that efficiency is coming in that 70, 72 range, my number should be really close to that, right?
Correct.
And that'll let me know that my efficiency is, and that's usually a pretty decent number, I would say.
Now, all of this, I'm sorry for interrupting you, but
No, please. Just if you would explain a little bit more.
Well,
because
all
I'm
of this,
still a little lost.
No, it's okay. All of this, I want to back up a second. All of this is also assuming that a person is actually doing an all-grain batch of beer. Its efficiency doesn't come as much into play with extract, or at least I don't remember worrying about it as much when I was doing extract batches.
No, I think because most of your sugars are just going to come from that extract itself, so it kind of is or it isn't. As long as you've been able to measure properly, you should have a pretty good efficiency. Now, in a partial mash or a mini mash,
that's true.
That could be an issue. Tracking that efficiency on there, but a lot of the time. If you use one of these programs or something, that's going to be your easiest way. And whenever you set up there's generally going to be like an equipment profile, right? And that's going to help you get your efficiency as well. Is that
Correct.
Is that right, or is that brew house efficiency, or?
Well, it depends. Like I know Beersmith actually has both a mash efficiency and then an overall brew house efficiency, which is a whole separate thing. Well, mash efficiency is definitely part of your brew house efficiency, but getting back to mash efficiency.
Okay.
So definitely with Beersmith, it will help you to calculate that as you're putting your recipe together. And I think the default in there for most equipment is around about 80 to 85%.
Okay.
If memory serves.
No,
me.
that seems about right. Yeah.
Okay. So if you're putting together your recipe and you try it, as Brock was saying, you'll know if you're a little bit off based upon whether you're extracting more sugars or not. Now.
So when I'm calculating this,
Yes.
say I've got Beersmith and I'm pretty savvy. I'm going to go ahead and put that that number in there. Let's say I'm shooting for 72% efficiency, right? So I'm trying to get this recipe, trying to get my numbers right, and my numbers are way off. Okay, so I'm either very high or very low, something like that. Now I would probably have to adjust that efficiency up or down a little bit, right? For that. So it's not always just like cut and dry. You kind of got to play with it a little bit, play with that number just a little bit to get what you're actually getting.
Yes, and kind of added along with this, I'm not sure if we mentioned, this is measuring your gravity before your boil.
Yes, pre-boil.
Pre-boil gravity. So there'll be a part on Beersmith that mentions and in a lot of recipes it'll mention what is your pre-boil gravity. So this is the gravity that you've gotten once you have run off, once you've finished sparging. This is the gravity of your wort as you're about ready to start your boil and do all your stuff with your hops and whatnot.
Right, because your pre-boil gravity is just telling you how you did on your extract, right?
Correct.
If you extracted a good amount of sugar, and there's lots of factors in that as well. Sparge water, how much volumes, those sorts of things as well. But we can get into that in a bit.
Okay.
So I'm shooting for this efficiency. Say I've been coming really, really low. What are some things, some reasons why I wouldn't be getting a good extract efficiency value?
Okay.
Are you ready to talk about that?
Sure. So there's a number of things that can negatively affect your mash efficiency. And a lot of times when people come in to talk with us, that's one of their big questions is, what am I doing wrong?
I'm not hitting my numbers.
Exactly.
It was supposed to be this. It's not. So if you've gotten an all grain kit from us and it says it's supposed to, you're supposed to come out with this specific gravity and that's much lower, then we know that we have a problem somewhere.
Correct. So the idea is you then begin to start looking at your process, because there's something within the entire process from grain to the point of your pre-boil gravity. There's something a little bit off. Now, it could be something as simple as your grain crush. And
I tell you, the grain crush is not just a very simple thing.
Okay.
Finally, we had talked about, saving some dollars and buying grain in bulk and stuff. I went and I bought myself a mill. And, I had a really great system. I was using the Sabco 350 at that point. And I had some issues. I could not hit my numbers. I couldn't figure out what was going on. And it all came to this gap was not set properly on my mill, and I had thought I had set it, but there was a bolt on there, and one side had gotten a little bit loose, and it wasn't getting a good crush on that grain.
Okay.
So that crush could be a huge deal.
Yes.
Now definitely don't stress out of it, anything like this. I think we set our gap at 0.05, I believe is
think that's
what
right.
it is. And you can check if you have a mill at home, you can set your mill gap with a spark plug gap alignment tool, right?
Yes.
So it's just like a little pocket knife kind of looking thing that's got different sized just metal planks, really.
yeah, they're just like little tiny, almost, they look like blades, but they're just little thin pieces of metal, and you can put those in there to figure out exactly where your gap is.
Set it in that gap, set that gap up so that you can get an optimal crush, and we can help you with that. There's lots of recommendations online, and with your system and what you're using too, you may need to set that gap just a little bit closer.
Yes.
Or you might need to set it a little bit further apart. If it's if you're having a lot of stuck mashes, that sort of thing, it could be that your gap is set a little bit too small.
And so grain crush can be a big factor in it. Also, the idea
Want
of
to talk about this grain
Sure.
crush?
So
since we're talking grain crush,
so we're talking grain crush. Now I'm going to put this over here on the Tyler
and
can.
I have to give the shout out to Mr. Nigel. He is with us.
Hello, Nigel. I just brewed your bitter this morning and did an extract version of it. We're trying to work it up. So
Smelled good.
yeah, because we didn't have the Boadicea hops, but Austin, through his super powers,
has my hop whisperer back there has
Yeah.
reached out and has got us the Boadicea hop.
yep, he has 11 pounds coming. So
So if you guys like any UK hops, the Boadicea will be in house for a limited amount of time.
Yeah.
Please buy as much as you can.
So going over here to these grains, we've got two different kinds of crushes here, and
So I get questions all the time,
okay,
and it is about the double milling. Could you please double mill my grain?
Okay.
I've heard that.
so what we have here on this is
Sorry, we can talk about that in a minute.
No, it's all right. Go in order.
on the list.
It's all right. We don't have to go in order. It's all good. As you see here, we've got two different grain crushes. The one on this side that my finger is pointed at.
Get that on the Tyler cam.
Okay. The one that my finger is currently pointed at is a double mill. So it has been crushed a lot more than the one over here that you see is a different look to it. And I mean, it's a pretty noticeable difference between the two. The problem with sometimes we'll have people ask to double mill their grains. The problem that you can run into with double milling is the fact that with our mill here, it becomes like a powder. I mean, you can see,
It's almost pulverized.
yeah. And the
So
problem,
you've got some flour there almost. you
yeah.
know?
And the problem with that is you can easily get a stuck sparge because that stuff will become like concrete
Right.
in the bottom of your mash tun.
Or even in your brew in a bag. I have a lot of guys that brew in a bag, and they say, "Will you double mill my grains so that I can get this efficiency?" A lot of the times when it's double crushed, you can get a lot of grist, a lot of stuff in your final extract as well because it's pulverized basically.
Whereas if you look at this other crush right here, there's not a whole lot of flour. The grains have been cracked well because what you're wanting is you're not wanting to pulverize the grain into dust or into the smallest pieces possible. I mean, you're looking for there's still to be kind of some coarseness to it.
Yeah, so how it works, right? We just need to find the inside. So, in a mash, we want that entire kernel to be surrounded by water. So that's why we crush it in the first place, right? So we can get to the inside of that, let those enzymes get in there and do its thing. So the guys actually did a lot of experiments on this double mill versus, regular, just a good gap setting on a mill and run it through. And I found that the efficiency value was absolutely identical from both things. So it's just not necessary.
Yeah. Whereas you look at this other one, and I mean, clearly, as I have it in my hand, it's dust. It's become completely pulverized.
Absolutely.
And so that can cause you some problems with your efficiency and with your mash in general.
Just like using that Tyler cam, I think, don't you?
I love the Tyler cam.
I do too. So, I hope that clears up some of that. I mean, absolutely, if we will double mill your grains if you like them that way. We just
We aim to please.
we absolutely will. But just so that you guys know, and it's an unnecessary thing. Our mills are set with an appropriate gap, and the crush is already pretty doggone
It's good.
Yeah.
It is good.
We used to do some things like our Marisada is a very husky grain, so that's another thing you might look at on your mills at home. Now we have a fantastic mill, so we put the Marisada in there, grinds it right up. We no longer have to double crush it. We had some other mills in the past. We would go ahead and double crush that for you guys just to make sure that you could get that efficiency. But
Yeah. So keep that in mind as you're formulating your recipes. Now, another thing is using different mills. It's real important that, if you can afford to buy a mill, get one. Get one, get it
What a great segue. We were just talking about this. So this is another thing that could negatively affect our mash efficiency.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because you can have mills that are set for slightly different gaps, and if that's the case, you're gonna get different efficiency. One of the things, if you're wanting to try and nail your numbers and get consistency to your beer, then you need to use your same mill at the same setting every single time. And so,
Or dial in your new mill. You get
Exactly.
your new mill, you run it through there, you're not going to have the same efficiency, right?
Correct.
You could be off a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I've known people that would get, they'd get their grains milled at one homebrew store, and then they go to another one and get a mill, some milled there, and then
And say, oh, my numbers are off. What have you done?
yeah,
Generally, it's always going to be the product's fault and not the brewer. Is that,
yeah, oh yeah,
Is that the rule we'd like to follow here?
oh yeah. It's easier to blame your ingredients than yourself sometimes.
I know
we all
I'm
do
always right, so.
Yeah, I know. I've done the same thing. I mean, nobody wants to admit they've messed up.
So, but yeah, no, I think that's an interesting point, especially if you're milling your own malt. That's like, hey, I was getting these numbers forever. I've got this new mill, and now my numbers are wonky.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing can be getting channeling during your sparge.
And what is channeling?
Okay, what channeling is where, one of the things is when you're sparging, you're wanting to rinse all of your grains and get all of those remaining sugars out of your mash and into your boil kettle. But with channeling, suddenly there can be moments in which actually kind of these little like channels will form, sometimes at the sides of your mash tun or through through different parts of the mash itself. And the water will just go through those areas primarily and
Just
not
kind of
flow.
erode away to go through there. So the water is just flowing straight through that channel.
Correct.
And it's not coming through.
Okay.
Not coming through the rest of that entire grain mash. That was the end word. Great.
Yes. So channeling is something that can also negatively affect your mash because then you're not rinsing the grains like you're wanting to be able to, and you're not getting all those sugars out, and that's going to definitely affect your numbers in the end.
Again, I had an enormous problem with this. This does happen. Again, on the Sapco, and I always have always fly sparged myself. That's just the way that has always worked very well for me. And I couldn't figure out again why we were getting this. Well, we were getting some channels. So what we decided to do was about halfway through the mash, we would actually take a paddle and just kind of make sure that any of that channeling had happened, because we were vorlofting the entire time. We were recirculating that mash so we had an even temperature from top to bottom.
Okay.
And a lot of times channels would form in there, even though we had, so it came from the bottom out through a hose, and we had it just kind of coiled on the top like that. We figured that was a good way of doing it so we could get this nice swirling kind of method on there. But it was causing these channeling in there, and we were missing our numbers on there. So it just kind of got in there with with our mash paddle and broke that back up about halfway through the mash. Is when we did it. We wanted to make sure that mash sat for at least 30 minutes because we didn't want it nice and gristy. Right? We had gone through this trouble to have this recirc. We wanted that to be a grain bed that was already set by the time we were doing our extract.
Okay.
But it's a very real problem. Now, is there a good way to kind of guard against that?
Well, I've found that if I batch sparge, it's much less likely for me to get channeling during the sparge. But still, like you, I recirculate throughout my entire mash. And I do the similar thing. Almost halfway through my mash, I get in my mash paddle, and I kind of break things up. Also, I've noticed, sometimes what'll happen for me is, because I'm pumping the whole time, I can get a lot of compaction down on the bottom of my grain bed, and that can cause problems with the draining out.
Yeah.
And so suddenly I'm not
Stuck
getting
mash.
Exactly. I can get a stuck mash. So I get in there and kind of work it up and stir it up to make sure everything is.
Yes. Well, and that's what, especially in the pro side as well. These guys have problems with that pressure being down in there on that mash bed, and they'll actually stuck it. That's why they have those rakes that come through, and they go very, very, very slowly through that mash, just so that doesn't happen, any channeling, and that pressure is kind of broken up on top of there, which is a neat thing. So there's other ways. Sparging, you can spread out your sparge up on the top, these sort of things, but it never is 100% sure that you're not going to get a channel in there. So I think that's a good method through that mash, just breaking it up.
Okay. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say something that can also affect your efficiency is over sparging. You'll want to make sure you are calculating the amount of sparge water you need. And for instance, if you're batch sparging, Beersmith kind of can help you figure that out, how much water to use for that. If you're fly sparging, it can help you do the same. But then there's also, I don't.
So now what you're talking about is if I have sparged with too much water, right? My volume is going to be more. So I've added more water to my overall volume.
Correct.
Which is going to give me a lower number because my sugar is thinned out, right?
Correct.
And just cut that down, right?
Yes, exactly. And so that can affect your efficiency.
So now, if this has happened to me, is there a good fix for what I can do? I've undershot now.
Okay.
I'm stuck with this. Is there a good fix to kind of get those numbers back up again?
There is. You're not stuck with it. It's what you can do, and I mean it lengthens out the brew day a little bit, but you can lengthen your boil.
Okay.
And it might add, and I mean I've heard some debate about kettle caramelization and color, but you might get some kettle caramelization, depends upon how strong your burner is and what you're using.
And how rigorous your boil is,
Correct. But you can just go ahead and boil it a little bit longer. Another option which I've seen some people do is they have actually.
Michael's having some issues out front here.
Yep. Is I've seen some people actually add dry malt extract, which I'm not a huge proponent of that because.
Or corn sugar.
Yeah, or corn sugar. Which corn sugar, you'll lighten up the body and you're not getting anything from anything from the malt.
Just booze.
Yeah, just booze. But my recommendation would be to boil it longer. And I've done that before. I've had some times where I've over-sparged or, my numbers came in a lot lower than I wanted, and my volume was still pretty decent.
Absolutely. In fact, at the Iron Mash competition this year, we came out a little bit low on our numbers, and we lengthened that boil a little bit, and we ended up actually winning. It actually provided pretty nicely because it was a doppelbock, and we did get a little bit of caramelization. We boiled the heck out of it to try to get that number down. So I think we got some of those nice melanoids and kind of Maillard reactions, which boded well for that doppelbock, style that we were doing anyway. So
nice. Okay. So I mean, it can also work in your favor. It could be a
I'm not sure I would do it intentionally.
No.
Not if I'm trying to get a repeatability out of my beer, which
Correct.
I'm always trying to, if I've made something now and I really enjoy that beer, I'm trying to take as many variables and get them out of the beer as I possibly can so that I can repeat that beer again.
Correct. Which that's a huge challenge as a home brewer, and that might be kind of an interesting episode is consistency in your brewing and and repeatability.
I think so. There's a lot of good little points and tips that you can do.
Yeah.
So now there's another thing here
Inconsistent temperature?
that could negatively affect your mash efficiency, and that's pH.
Okay.
Okay, and I think a lot of us are worried about pH and probably don't need to be. There's a lot, that barley is pretty much engineered to give you a nice. God did some great engineering with barley for beer. And it gives you a pretty nice mash or pH level.
Yeah.
But you can, if you have really bad water or something like that, that can throw off your pH in your mash. Do you have any good tips on maybe a early home brewer?
I remember early on I was really concerned about pH, but I didn't really know what it was. And so my idea was to buy that 5.2 stuff.
Did the 5.2?
And I put
we
that
sell
in,
that here.
We do. And I put that in everything. Just because I was so paranoid that my pH, because I'd heard that if your pH isn't good, then you're going to have all kinds of nasty stuff happen to your beer. So I was shoveling that in every
beer.
Every beer.
There was a time that you decided you didn't want to do that anymore? Or?
Yeah, because I suddenly realized that it wasn't doing anything for me. Because I ran out of it at one point, made the beer, and the beer still tasted great.
Tasted fine.
Tasted fine.
And generally, it's going to be the case. In your mash, I mean, there's the pH in there it's going to be, especially at our level, it's going to be pretty good. Unless you're, if you're dipping some well water out in the middle of nowhere or something, you might want to have that water tested, or you can use a little bit of that 5.2 will help you with that as well. On some bigger scales and stuff, a little lactic acid to lower your pH, if you need it to be. Now, a little bit of that stuff goes a long, long way, guys, because you can end up with a sour beer pretty easy.
And something you can do also is acid malt or sour malt, and that can help with it. And actually, if memory serves me, there is a tool in Beersmith to help you adjust your pH if you need to do so.
So, and if you'll explain to him just a little bit about what is this acid malt? What are the Germans doing here?
I don't know how they make it, but I know it has a high level of acidity to it.
Yeah, I think they just soak it with a little bit of lactic acid.
Okay.
And that's what's actually in that malt. So it's a good way to just lower that pH a little bit. which is nice. Dry the beer out a little bit. You can, use that for those sorts of things.
For the Reinheitsgebot.
Ah, the Reinheitsgebot.
Oh, yes. And the Germans put that in a lot of their beers, so might be something you want to check into if you're having that issue.
And we sell it.
We do. We absolutely sell it here from Irix, one of the best maltsters in the world.
Put that with some of the best hops of Girillo, and here we go.
The Girillo hop. If you guys haven't used this Girillo hop, it's absolutely fantastic. We're going to start putting in a lot of beers.
So another thing that can actually affect your mash is also it's inconsistent temperature. One of the things which as brewers we want to be able to do is to maintain the temperature of our mash and keep it in to where we're wanting. If you're wanting it at 148, to keep it right there close within a degree or so. 152, again, keep it in there within a degree or so. If you have widely fluctuating temperatures in your mash, you're going to begin to have some problems with your efficiency because you're going to be pulling out different sugars at different temperatures, and you're not going to be getting the sugars that you're wanting to, whether it be long chain or short chain sugars.
Because at different temperatures during that time, those has different enzymes, right? And those enzymes will start converting those different types of sugars in there. And what kind of had come to mind when I finally got off the cooler and I got myself a nice 15-gallon kettle and I had my false bottom in there and I was like, ooh, I can finally do step mashing, right? So I'm getting my mash water ready and I've got the burner going as high as it'll possibly go. And it's kind of like, man, this is taking forever to get this up. And it's like, it's slowly creeping up. And then it seems like at one point it just goes like, and all of a sudden my water is so over the temperature I was looking, and then we have to, cool it back down. So, but there was times too when we would heat our mash a little bit from the bottom. We were trying to keep that temperature the same from top to bottom. I had a thermometer in the top, and then I had a long one that I would put in the bottom. And we were trying to get that temperature the same, mixing and that sort of thing. But like that on a propane burner, you can take that temperature and raise it way too high, and that would be a really good indication of I'm not hitting the numbers that I want to get here, especially if you're trying to do some step mashing and that sort of thing. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. So another thing which actually can also affect your mash efficiency is using under-modified malt or malt with a low diastatic power. Low diastatic powder.
A little diastatic powder in there.
Little diastatic powder.
So the diastatic powder is just the level at which the enzymes are breaking down those starches and making them into sugars. It's just some fancy brewies there for you. But and under modified malts, most all of our malts nowadays are very modified. They're friable is what they call that. And what that ensures for is that you're going to get a high amount of extract value from that. I would say probably here at this shop, our most under modified malt would be our floor malted Bohemian.
But even that is still pretty modified, isn't it?
Even that is still pretty modified. You're still going to get pretty good results out of it. But you will find that with some different malts, there's some different diastatic powder.
Now I got you doing it.
Well, so, and one of the major things is 6-row versus 2-row.
Okay.
The 6-row has an enormous amount of diastatic power. And I mean, that's why, so like if I'm using a lot of adjuncts or something, a little bit of 6-row in there sometimes is going to help break down. Like if I'm using a lot of corn or rice or something like that that's difficult to break down, something I would have to mash for a longer amount, maybe a little bit of 6-row in there because of that higher power that's in there, it'll help break that down a lot easier.
Why is the 6-row? Do you know why the 6-row has more?
I don't know why. I just know that that's a fact.
I would say this. Well, here's the thing. Now 2-row is so well modified.
Yeah.
6-row is becoming a thing of the past.
Yeah, that nobody's
Because
using it
there's
anymore.
enough enzymes and diastatic power in 2-row now that a lot of maltsters aren't even making 6-row anymore.
Yeah,
Interesting.
well, and you from the benefit of the 2-row, you get a lot, generally a lot better flavor barrier, those sorts of things that you just can't get from that 6-row. It's just generally not as quality of a malt, that 6-row, but it does have a super high diastatic power. And I still have a couple of recipes that I throw a little bit of that in.
Okay.
I got a rice lager, I put that a little little bit of that in, and that was the case. But Stubby's absolutely right. Many of the maltsters now, they're picking varietals, and they have found ways of germinating and malting their grain now, where it's very, very modified. You're going to get a lot of extract out of it.
Many years ago, I mean, well, even probably before I started home brewing, probably well before you started home brewing, there were malts that were out there that were not very well modified, and you wouldn't get as much diastatic power from them. But these days, most of the malt is. Now, I know sometimes there's new malt companies that come up, and I don't know. Are you familiar with any of the new malt companies? And I mean, do they give reports? Like, I mean, you can get a report on all of our malt that talks about its diastatic power and.
Generally, generally your maltsters that have been out for, or that have any sort of size to them, the consistency is going to be so good that you're not going to have to worry about it. We do have some local guys, and I'm not familiar enough,
Okay.
Jeff, to really speak
Okay.
about whether those grains are being modified as well. But these techniques are out there. They're a lot of them are kept secrets just to the maltster. But I mean, it's knowledge that many malt companies have, and so I just don't think it's something we need to worry about as
Okay.
much.
Okay, but I mean, I guess along the same lines, if you decide you want to try one of these kind of boutique maltsters, just kind of maybe keep in mind that.
Yeah. And you can always ask for a malt analysis too. If you buy a sack of grain, what are the numbers on this? If that's something that you're really concerned about, or if you know enough to read that, and have that mean something to you.
Yeah.
So, anything else that we got here?
Not that I can think of it. I haven't seen any questions. Gene said hi.
Yes. Hello, Gene.
Hi, Gene.
No, I don't see much anything. We don't have a whole lot of people with us today, unfortunately.
Oh, it's okay. They missed some of the excitement.
Absolutely.
So, things definitely to consider when looking at your mashing and your mash efficiency. A lot of little variables to it. If you have questions, again, feel free to contact us, email, phone. We're happy to help, and do anything we can.
Yeah, just simply put, your efficiency is the amount of extract that you're extracting from your grain, and as long as your process, is sound, it has to be one of these things. And what I always like to do is just eliminate one thing at a time. So you're doing this brew, just take one thing at a time. You're going to get to whatever that problem is.
Yeah.
And if you have any questions about why you're not getting there, feel free to call anyone here. They'd love to talk to you about it and find out what is it that you're doing, and how can we find a better way for you to mash this grain so that you can get those numbers back up, so you can get back to making good beer.
Mm-hmm. All right. So again, thank you for watching. Thank you for your orders and your interest. And if you have any topics that you'd like for us to address, please, you can list them in the comments, or you can email us about it. We'd be happy to do them.
Yep, would love to do some new shows with your guys' ideas.
Yeah.
We thank you very, very much again for all your orders coming in. Guys, keep it up. Guys, keep brewing. I can't wait till this whole thing is done. We'd love to taste some of your beers.
Oh, yeah.
Also, I guess stay safe
Stay at home.
and brew it. Cheers.
Cheers.